Hello and welcome to this conversation on intelligent automation as the operating model for driving digital transformation in pharma, which is powered by automation anywhere. One of the core sectors critical for India's economy is the pharma and life sciences sector. This is not just from the perspective of India's economic aspirations, but also driven by the need for improved quality of healthcare for India's population, access to the latest drug innovations, better manufacturing, and more. While pharma and life sciences companies continue to leverage technology for better efficiencies and customer experience, robotic process automation will play a key role in the digital transformation journey of Indian pharma. And while most pharma companies have leveraged some sort of automation, some have moved up the ladder to intelligent automation. Today, we will discuss the changing role of digital in pharma and life sciences, how companies can leverage intelligent automation that leverages artificial intelligence and cloud, and how mindset changes can help companies become automation first biopharma companies. To help us do that, we have some experts in intelligent automation with deep expertise in working with pharma companies. First up, we have Milan Sheth, who's Executive Vice President, India, Middle East, and Africa region at Automation Anywhere, whose AI-powered digital workforce platform optimizes the business processes of over 90% of the top pharma companies. Milan brings over 20 plus years of experience in the advisory and consulting space. We also have Mahmood Majeed, who is the managing principal for ZS's digital and transformation business. Mahmood is based out of the US and brings over 25 plus years of experience driving data, analytics, and technology transformation with life sciences. We're also privileged to have with us Suresh Ramanan, who is senior principal at ZS. Suresh leads the India technology business and intelligent automation practice at ZS, and he brings over 30 plus years of experience in the advisory and consulting space with life sciences. Thank you so much for joining us on this discussion, gentlemen. First up, I wanted to begin with the topic that's really all around us. I mean, COVID has been around for the last 2+ years, and although life has gotten back to normal in many ways, but it still doesn't go away. It's still in the background, disrupted supply chains, and so much more. So from that, I really wanted to start out by asking you all how the pandemic and resulting disruption has really impacted pharma globally, and what are some of the new factors that have cropped up that drive the need for our automation? Perhaps, Mahmood, since you bring a global perspective to this discussion, perhaps we can start with you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ivor, for the discussion. Pharma has been witnessing several macro trends over the last few years, and COVID just accelerated those from a digital standpoint. And really, what that meant is it's not only to respond to crisis, but also this became a way for pharma companies to create some strategic or sustainable advantage for them. So all in all, pandemic not only just created this whole acceleration for digital, but has also made it default as digital for pharma. Now, let me give you a few examples. Patient engagement had to be refactored, right? Patients now are being treated through telehealth, remote monitoring, and pharma had to increase also. So with that shift, pharma had to increase that focus, that how do they connect with patients directly from a direct-to-patient engagements. Physician engagements became much more digital, or I would say hybrid, right? In the context of not just a personal promotion, but also bringing personalized engagement, personalized content, and so on and so forth. We all saw the advancements in medical innovation, right? There was unparalleled ways of how the entire COVID vaccine got developed in 45 days. And not only that, but many of the existing drugs got repurposed, regulations got relaxed, as well as the whole drug discovery program got accelerated. There was a lot of discussion on value and price dynamics. As you shift towards virtual care, how does that change from a value and price dynamics from a global standpoint? And I would say ways of working was also had a significant shift from how you are really adopting future of work. Processes that were not digitally native or were not digitized had to be completely reimagined. And there were some very unique challenges that pharma had to deal with. Imagine, what would a scientist do sitting remotely when he has no access to his apparatus and all of that stuff? So that not only helped pharma respond, but it also became CIO's agenda that technology automation became the center of anything and what they were doing. And then CIOs, because they look across the enterprise as a more expanded function, we saw that the need for intelligent data management, augmented analytics, and intelligent automation, which is really bringing intelligence to RPA, and focus on hyper automation, hyper focus on DevOps, and building the DevOps teams became the core focus of pharma companies. And proving, kind of validating the point of what Gartner suggested, that in 2024, which is about 2-3 years from now, 30% of automation technologies will be disrupting the operational cost with about 30%.
Very interesting insight, Mahmood. Anything you'd like to add to that, Milan, from your experience of working, especially with Indian pharma companies?
I think, Ivor, I think couple of points, right? So I think I would just add two more challenges to what Mahmood highlighted. One is the entire supply chain disruption became a norm in the industry, given not just the recent geopolitical situation, but ability to service a large set of customers given the circumstances we all were operating in. And the second thing, which he touched on, reimagining the processes. Pharmaceutical, unlike a lot of other industries, was largely a B2B business with a very limited consumer, which was always led through a distribution chain. That completely got changed or challenged, if I may say, where the companies had to find ways to reach to customers, whether in form of vaccines or whether in forms of drugs, and so on and so forth. So I think those are the kind of two additional pieces which happened. From an Indian or other larger context, I think one thing which definitely, in my view, is worth highlighting is the fact that that entire supply chain aspect, which were always unidimensional in the way it were designed. I think that got challenged significantly, particularly in the Indian context. And then the second is the integration with the ecosystem. So when I say ecosystem, it is the health management, government and regulatory agencies. If I take the live example, some of our customers were they were planned to do 100,000 tests a month. They were to do 20 times, 30 times, 40 times, that kind of. How do you handle that situation and challenge? Kind of became pretty pertinent in a country like India and countries where there is a massive population which had to be catered to. So I would say just the scale, in addition to everything I think Mahmood said, in India probably that scale multiplied the some of the challenges, and that's where the entire digital, not just automation, but digital as a whole, became a great way to solve very innovatively some of those problems.
And I think you're absolutely right, Milan. The whole supply chain disruption and need for the resilient supply chain was a global need, right? And this whole concept of Industry 4.0 and building simulations or digital supply chains or having control towers and kind of completely doing this from a virtual standpoint became a core focus of pretty much every company. And a lot of them were not ready, and they had to really refactor. And that kind of was, I was reading some research, and it was interesting to see that the two verticals that will actually get significantly disrupted than what they are today to what they will be in the next 5 to 10 years. One is healthcare, and the other one is education. And I think this entire ecosystem point that Milan brought up is also a very, very critical element of why these two areas will get significantly disrupted, especially on the healthcare side.
I think both of you have articulated the disruption, what happened, and really the need for automation really well. So Suresh, I wanted to ask you, right, and especially in the context of what Mahmood just said, if healthcare is going to be one of the industries that's going to be most disrupted in the next 10 years, automation is all the more crucial. So where are pharma companies on their automation journeys today? And are you really seeing acceleration of the automation agenda to really include artificial intelligence, etc., for instance?
Very interesting question, because this is almost the question we're dealing with every day from our clients, right? Most of the clients are interested in saying, where am I really in the journey? The questions that come to us are around how should I even set up, my own automation capability? And so they're all thinking about, how do I get there? And what we did, as a firm is really developed our own maturity model around, where should clients, look at from their journey perspective. And so in a level 1 to level 5 journey, which starts with some clients being very ad hoc in how they are thinking about automation, intelligent automation, and digital transformation. There are others who are a little more in the opportunistic side, right? They're not moving away from it, but as and when it comes, they're more going after it. Some have gone to the point of being systemic, where or very systematic about how they approach automation, and then few of them have institutionalized, and I would say that's really not so much in the pharma side. And then once you've been able to really set up your digital practice and your automation capabilities, you see that as a strategic entry point. Then they actually start moving towards how do you adapt yourself to really benefit from the automation journey. So to your question, I would say pharmas are really in that 1 to 3 bucket, anywhere from ad hoc to being sometimes opportunistic. Some of them have moved toward the systematic, apart from outliers here and there. But we're seeing that acceleration happening. The good thing is more and more clients are asking us the question saying, what next? What should I do? And so I think that need to actually step it up is actually happening right now. So they're starting to move it from being a very tactical, back of the agenda thing to something being more strategic. And a recent IDC report really said how more than 65% of the companies are saying automation and intelligent automation is going to be 25% of their spend for next year, 2022 and beyond. So it's starting to become much more strategic than ever before. What we're also seeing is, in the form of the work that clients are asking us to do. So I'll take 2 very interesting examples. One is in the area of Medicaid, where clients have been, used to very large, old, traditional processes. The clinical research organizations are doing their thing, and it's been paperwork for many years. They're ready to replace that with digital transformation. So one of the areas we're trying to do here is create chatbots for the Medicaid process, where we can take off some of the traditional manual stuff that the CRAs used to do, and then moving that into the bot, and that gives them a huge amount of flexibility in really focusing on analytics and outcomes after that, instead of really getting their heads on this. The other one is, both Milan and Mahmood alluded to it. This whole COVID acceleration has led to digitization in such a very meaningful way, I would say. Sales reps across the field used to go through trainings with loads and loads of training documentation and stuff like that to answer prescriber questions. And what we're seeing now is we're one of our East Coast clients developing a natural language NLP based chatbot, which is just going to help them with a knowledge engine, a search engine that will help them answer prescriber questions on the fly. Right, so they don't have to go back and refer to old documentation and go through this, tons and tons of training. You can actually do that much more smartly. And I think the next gen of that is going to lead to NLP in a more meaningful way, more development of chatbots and stuff like that. At least one of our clients for sure is making this a really big part of their agenda. They're making this a mandatory KRA across all their line managers. Right, automation should be top of the agenda for them. So we're seeing that change. How accelerated they will be is still a question of time, but we're clearly seeing them moving the needle from automation being tactical to something much more strategic.
Thank you, Suresh. Milan, what are you seeing when you speak to pharma companies? And secondly, what can pharma companies learn from early adopters of robotic process automation? The BFSI industry, for instance, which has always been a very early adopter of technology.
Yeah. So I'll try and answer the second one first, and then answer the very unique requirements from the pharmaceutical industry. In a banking and financial services world, the core back office processes is something which got automated first, very similar to life sciences, finance, HR, procurement, IT. I think in pandemic, one of the big things which we saw happening in BFSI sector, where where the company started focusing on the front end of their operations. So when you're facing customers in a branch, you're facing suppliers, distributors, how do you engage with them? And how can employees use bots to accelerate the activities they're doing, have a better customer experience or a supplier experience? And most importantly, ability to get control and do more in a limited time. So I think that is one very important aspect in my view. As a company, we've seen that pharmaceutical companies can adopt. One of the great examples of this is how companies can enable their front end workers in healthcare systems like an NHS, where 300,000 health workers are using bots to capture information, to further service their customers better, inform the ecosystem better. So from the front desk to by the time you move to the doctor, the information is seamlessly flown to the ultimate caregiver. And those are the opportunities which I think from banking world one can replicate in the services world. One more area which I think pharmaceutical companies came to us with a need was around the ability to crunch processing time in a shortest possible way and still deliver the great quality results. A perfect example would be adverse effect monitoring. When a drug gets launched, you have an adverse effect monitoring which happens in the patients which are kind of being administered that drug. Now, in case of COVID, I think what as Mahmood mentioned earlier, that the timelines crunch significantly, and hence the ask was that can we use automation and can we do a large volume of transaction which earlier would have taken few quarters in, let's say, less than a month, without compromising on quality, without compromising on the compliance requirement, because these are very, very highly regulated aspects of the pharmaceutical industry. So I would say that entire regulatory aspect and using automation to process and deliver better output in a shorter time is an area where I think pharmaceutical companies can replicate the success banking industry has had in the past.
Mahmood, you lead digital transformation business for Zeus globally, and obviously you speak to a lot of leaders in the pharma sector. Do you believe that there is a mindset change that is required when it comes to adopting intelligent automation? And if so, how do leaders really drive this change within the companies?
No, I think it's a very good point. I would say absolutely, this is a significant effort needed to think about mindset change. And if I was to just quote a report that says that 44% of the RPA automation initiatives fails due to lack of change management. Now, from our vantage point, there's a way to think about this whole thing in a very different way, right? So first, as you think about with the digital acceleration in pharma, companies are moving towards what I call the digital native operating model, right? This is not Amazon or a Google or a Uber that they have to start. They all were traditional brick and mortar companies, and now they're kind of moving towards this digital native operating model. I would say they're walking towards it, right? It's a slow thing. What that means is the core capabilities like data, AI, process, and automation become the binders of different functions across the enterprise, right? And this gives the ability for business users to learn from what others are doing, to expand the scope, to expand the scale, and to incorporate learnings. So in my opinion, a few things that are really important to drive this change is first is to set the right context. Automation, the fear is, hey, you're going to replace people and you're going to put bots. And that's completely the wrong way to think about it. It's all about how do you humanize change, that you are bringing amazing technology, amazing user experience, and applied intelligence coming together to amplify humans and to really help them do better stuff. The other one is, senior leaders have to be involved and engaged as part of your sponsorship. So they actually are able to connect these initiatives with the broader company's initiative and ambitions. And they are also, people sometimes only think about business stakeholders. They don't worry about, risk, legal, compliance. All those people have to come together. I think this whole aspects of operating model needs to be thought through from a humanized approach, that that elevates the roles of human instead of replacing people. Because if the whole aspects is, so, the way to think about automation, in my opinion, is not just about productivity or cost efficiency, but it's also about cost effectiveness. It's a big difference between efficiency and effectiveness, and also about better human experiences. I think engaging people, doing co-creation, innovation workshops and hackathons to think about art of the possible, and then kind of identify what can be done, right? Where that becomes a core instead of just focusing on, hey, we want to just, do some sort of automation and so on. I think the other part is equal focus on process and reimagining the process. If you just take existing process and try to put bots around it, it's not going to work, right? Because it's not going to give you that strategic advantage that you can. If you are really able to use technology and automation as a disruptor, so that way you can actually explore more opportunities, then there is a lot more. And the last is, building a framework to think about how will you maintain ongoing demand, ongoing opportunities, and how do you really evolve, right? It's all about, take small pieces, celebrate success, scale fast, and really go big from an enterprise lens. Instead of starting and making a 3-year, 4 or 5-year program, you really make it very small incremental successes. So I feel these are very, very critical elements that, and usually people think of change management as the last step of the process. In my mind, that's the first thing you have to do, is to really, reshape the thinking and the mindset and why we are doing it.
Absolutely, Mahmood. I think that's so well said, right? Change management often is the last step in many companies when it actually should be the first. Milan, while Mahmood explained some of the mindset changes required, what do you feel is the digital ecosystem that is necessary for getting automation implementations?
So I first of all, I completely agree with Mahmood that automation is about reimagining processes, new operating model, and hence it requires the changes it requires. From a digital point of view, there are 3 choices which organizations have. First is cloud. That would you do some of these activities and scale rapidly on cloud? That's the first choice organizations make. Second is that do you do this from the front end, or do you do this from the back end? Now, this might sound like a very technological issue, but this is a very operating dimension to that, particularly in an industry which had not adopted technology in every part of the business, particularly on the channel side or on the internal functional interactions and so on and so forth. That's an area where organizations do need to take a call on how to integrate and how to automate. And probably the third aspect is the entire ecosystem, which is around security, privacy, particularly in the life sciences industry. Those are kind of important aspects. So if you keep those 3 dimensions in mind, cloud, backend versus front end, and security, that kind of defines for you the necessary digital ecosystem you need to kind of address to deliver the automation related changes. 2 important parameters we see customers across the life cycle adopt is in terms of the how they can make it automation first or a cloud first. So instead of automating a process which itself is broken, this is also a great opportunity where you kind of reimagine that and try and integrate with multiple systems. The second aspect is Mahmood referred to it as that you start small and so on and so forth. I think the space and scale at which one can drive also, this will not be an incremental project. So I think one of the learnings we have had from a very successful installations, thousands of bots, is they don't see it as a let me see the benefit, then I will take it to others. I think it's the real opportunity here is the way, and I like to compare this to the Six Sigma world maybe 15 years back, where every employee had ability to find a lean or a Six Sigma way in which to change the process, to relook at the process. Here you enable each of your employee in any process they are doing and make them aware of how automation can make their life easier, how it can augment their capabilities. And if that were to work, then the use cases, the demand for automation will come naturally. Otherwise, this becomes an IT project. This becomes a business sponsors project versus the word we use, Ivor, is democratizing some of these technologies like this, which every user can use it. And we use the word citizen user, that how every citizen in an enterprise can drive that. So I would say, in addition to those cloud security and some of those technical architectural elements, this is probably the last element of making everyone aware of the potential of automation, then let them adopt it naturally, versus like an IT or a function-led project.
And if I was to look ahead and see an upcoming, a progressive trend, I see this convergence of data, AI, and automation really coming together. And that will also, so, the whole digital context of transformation. So when you see these convergence, then there is automatically an expectation that from a digital ecosystem, you're bringing these capabilities in a much more integrated, tighter way. And I think, look, automation has been on the CIO's mind for the last 10, 20 years. And to be honest with you, people have spent so much time and money on cost efficiencies and taking out costs that there was nothing left anymore in the traditional technology ecosystem, unless the whole technology modernization happened. But the new thing is applied intelligence. How are you really applying AI? So it's not just about automating, it's about how do you really build automated. So this whole augmentation, leveraging NLP, IA, the AI features, the intelligent document processing, the machine learning, text mining are some of the very, very sophisticated features that are really exponentially driving the value of automation.
It's very interesting you say that, Mahmood, because at least 2-3 use cases that we are dealing with right now, the client never thought about AI and enabling analytics as an end outcome. And the more important part of the agenda was convert this process to an automated process. But now what never used to be available as structured information, it was all on documents, suddenly is now available as data. And so this confluence between data and AI is coming together, and we are really enabling deep-end analytics now with this new automation opportunity.
Suresh, that leads me to my next question, right? While that's certainly great, but how do CIOs really set tech expectations right when it comes to intelligent automations? It's certainly great that companies have gone from IT as just from an efficiency or cost perspective to really looking at what intelligence can be delivered. But how do leaders, CIOs especially, balance these transformation expectations, and especially when they report to boards that are perhaps not as savvy when it comes to technology and digital?
That's a great question, Ivor. And I would say, the first thing that companies need to do is really look at this as the long game, right? And they need to look at far beyond. This urgency is probably even more in pharma, because we're talking about pharma as a context. Because if you look at pharma for many years, the cost pressures are really increasing. Pharma is probably, as an industry, is probably one of the highest G&As, right? So they are at about 7% G&A, where the rest of all their industry peers are at about 2 points down, 5%-ish. But the really top end of pharma who really adopted this well are at 3.5%. That's significant, impact on their bottom line. So, and that's not going to come overnight. So they really have to look at this strategically as the long game. I think Mahmood and Milan both spoke about some very important and pertinent aspects. One is, that they need to really start looking at this beyond the cost efficiency play. I think there's other things that really need to come as enablers to automation, which is looking at agility and looking at accuracy and all of these things. Automation really is a great play for anywhere there is loads of transactional data, regulatory compliance needs, and so on. So, everywhere this is a big part of pharma for sure through the entire value chain. And if you look at each part of pharma, which moves from research to development to supply chain, manufacturing, commercial, across the value chain, there's just so much opportunity to automate right now. And the prompt is there, coming in from COVID. But I think really understanding the impact of course, at a BU level, what the impact of automation would be is one thing. But I think really looking at the end-to-end value chain and seeing, how does this impact my, the entire business transformation itself. And I think this Moderna and others who have really made themselves digitally native and impacted that end-to-end value chain in a phenomenal way. I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned from there. The other part is really driving people mindset, and that's a difficult change. The adoption part of it, and to Mahmood's point, I really love what Mahmood said, which is start thinking of that upfront. So if you want to make this balance of this transformation, it's not going to be overnight, but you'll have to invest in the right things like change management, mindset, really making this communication big, make it part of the CXO agenda, which has been around, but has it been strategically looked at? And then finally, you need to really invest in upskilling your organization. Adopting all of this will require a big change. And we've seen that most of the companies which are successful in this journey are the ones who have really invested in training and adoption in a very big way. And last but not the least, I would say simplify it, right? And you could over-engineer this to death. I think there's some easy, low-hanging fruit that you can get after. Make sure that you can simplify some of the transformations that you're trying to do, which will actually become a nice stepping stone towards future.
Last, I want to quickly come to the Automation Anywhere and ZS partnership. And I want to ask you all, how can Automation Anywhere and ZS really help the pharma sector accelerate this intelligent automation journey? And really, we talked about various points, right? How do you all help pharma companies drive mindset change, getting the digital ecosystem right, and expectations right to really deliver results? And I'd love to hear from all three of you, but perhaps Milan, perhaps you can start on this one.
I think, if I look at ZS, there are two very unique aspects they bring to the table for the end customers, which is the transformative consulting ability of the domain and the vertical, and second is their ability to deliver and through technology solutions, right? So I think one is that what's the end business requirement, and then how do you technologically deliver that? So I think the opportunity, as I see with ZS and Automation Anywhere, is to bring in that domain knowledge of life sciences or the sub-segments of life sciences on top of our kind of world-class technology platform and architecture. If I take a small example, today, if ZS were to demonstrate to their customers that, hey, every citizen user, which is today who are serving those customers from ZS facilities anywhere in the world, are using automation to deliver a better output to them. I mean, that's a starting point for them to then get customers to start seeing the benefit and the value, right? So because they'll say, hey, we are doing it for you in the ZS, and I think that's a great opportunity for us to collaborate and partner. And then the other area where typically domain-related solutions. So we have our cognitive product, IQBot. We have some of our front office products where a domain makes it very easily consumable by the customers. So customers are not waiting for somebody to come and do a discovery study and then identify the solution. There are industries have common set of problems, and with an industry experts or people with depth on the domain can really build those ready to consume solutions on top of a platform. So I would say, bringing that domain, bringing that consultative, transformative partnership ability, and then proving it that, hey, we have done it in our delivery facilities for you. Why don't you do it and then get the benefit of transformation? And those are the clear synergy areas for us to work together and service our customers together.
We know that pharma companies are moving towards this target operating model. They will go there. It is opportunity for us to think through what does the target operating model look like and start kind of building components towards it. Not everybody knows every aspect of it, but from a capability orientation, because many of the operations and processes are the same. It's just that how they are executing and packaging is different. So there's an opportunity to think about those processes up front. There's opportunity for us to exploit technology. For example, taking Automation Anywhere technology and exploit it in its full potential for R&D to scale drug discovery, for clinical trials to optimize trials, for supply chain to really being digitally native supply chains, to operationalize the commercial ecosystem and so on. How do we really package domain-based use cases and exploit technology and also kind of rethink about ROI and value? And it's not just where the answer ends. Think about what happens after. How to think about the change management. What happens when you change? What happens to the people? How do you elevate the people's quotient on technology and digital? How do you recreate the operating model? It's not just about, I'm going to bring a machine and then you figure out what you do with your people. How do you really give them a operating model to really think this through? And what is the skill evolution needed to work in these newer set of technologies? So we think that, we can, and most companies will have to figure this out. Instead, we let hundreds of companies do it their own way and with a lot of resources, or companies like us really join our hands together and put a purposeful focus. And if I feel that there's a focus and there's a strategic approach to this, then we can, be much more responsible from a delivery of value, accelerating value, and also be optimal in resource management.
I'll add, Ivor, that to the way we've worked as a partnership with Automation Anywhere, I think we need to continue to evolve what we've built so far. I think the more opportunities we are working together, we are seeing a great feedback loop going in from the kind of changes that we are making. And this is actually not even restricted just to pharma. We're seeing that across outside of pharma as well, beyond healthcare. And we are exploiting, to Mahmood's point, we are exploiting these tools which are out there and giving enough of feedback that the tools are also evolving based on client needs. And I think it's really, to Milan's point, the depth of domain that we are bringing in these areas that are really looking at the borderline use cases that these platforms were probably not built for, but are really evolving to suit the needs of the client. And I think that's a big plus when I look at our partnership going with AA together. We're also seeing that these changes that we are bringing together are impacting overall digital transformation. So like my earlier point, keeping the long game in mind, keeping the strategic view in mind, while a project is a project, but at the same time, are we keeping the eye on the bigger goal where the client wants to go, which is the larger digital transformation agenda? And I think we are playing a very instrumental role in getting the clients there.
Well, thank you, Suresh, and thank you, gentlemen. It's been a really fascinating discussion. We've really seen some great examples of how the pandemic really disrupted the pharma sector, how pharma companies have taken to automation, how they can really move up the value chain to intelligent automation, how to get mindset change right, how to get the digital ecosystem right, and finally, in terms of how Automation Anywhere and ZS can really help pharma companies do all of this. Thank you for these amazing inputs and for this very, very insightful discussion.